Calvin Ridley has decided to step away from football to focus on his mental health. Before we get into the fantasy football implications here, I just want to commend Calvin Ridley for making a very difficult decision. Mental health is extremely important, and knowing that he wasn't in a place where he can contribute to on the field activities must have been a very, very difficult choice to make at this point in his career. It takes a very big man to do what Ridley did, and we're wishing him all the best as he battles through this. Now, let's talk a little bit how this could affect some of the other skill players in Atlanta this year. The first guy I want to mention is arguably the biggest winner in this scenario, which is Cordarelle Patterson. He has seen a pretty steady target share throughout the entire season, but his highest use in this season came in a week 5 game in London where Ridley was a last minute scratch. In that game, he was able to garner 14 carries and 9 targets on the day. So we know that he can still produce regardless of whether Ridley's there or not. But if he sees any sort of uptick in usage, that is great for his value. As we know, targets are much more valuable than carries, and he can start to see additional work in the passing game to fill in for Ridley's absence. Every fanalist by now has talked about Patterson a ton already, so I'm not going to focus too much on him. You know by now that his usage as a running back and a wide receiver puts him in a very unique position that makes him extremely valuable in leagues, especially those where he has dual eligibility and can play in either slot. Another winner from this should be, well, every single wide receiver in Atlanta. Russell Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus, they should each see a slight bump in their rest of the season rankings. But a deep hole that I want to focus on a little bit is Taje Sharp. Similarly to Ridley, Sharp isn't extremely big, tall, fast, or agile, but he's just got this natural knack for getting open. He saw a season high in targets and yards last week, and he makes for a pretty nice stash in deeper leagues as he has a chance to really plant himself atop this pretty decrepit receiver core that doesn't have any wide receiver one at the moment. Kyle Pitts is somebody who is probably seen as the biggest winner here since he's losing his primary competition for targets. But me personally, I think his value kind of stays stagnant through all of this. He's played in just 7 games so far in the NFL. So, sample sizes and splits are pretty obsolete. He had his breakout game in week 5 when Ridley sat out, where he had 9 catches, 119 yards, and a touchdown in that London game. But he had his worst game of the season last week when Ridley sat out, where he had just 3 catches for 13 scoreless yards. Will he see more targets? Probably. Will he see more double teams and coverage from the league's top corners? Absolutely. Pitts is going to be tested very early in his career, and we're going to find out just how dominant he can actually be. He is far and away the most talented pass catcher on this team, so hopefully he has the ability to separate himself from the pack. Personally, I've got him ranked as a top 5 tight end through the rest of the season, but the increase in targets could help his week to week consistency a little bit, which is really nice to have in a tight end. Overall, though, I think that this is kind of net neutral for Kyle Pitts. That leaves us with the big loser in this situation, and unfortunately, I think that is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has had the luxury of having either Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley for pretty much his entire career, at least the vast majority of games that he's playing in. But there's been a sizable drop in Ryan's production in games where he hasn't had one of those elite receivers. He's seen about 35 less yards per game when he doesn't have Julio or Calvin Ridley. The Falcons have arguably the worst wide receiver core in the entire league right now, and it'll be very tough for a 36-year-old Matt Ryan to get over that hurdle. He falls out of my top 20 quarterbacks for the rest of the season as long as Ridley isn't playing. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguys to see these quick hitting videos coming at you throughout the entire season, as well as our full length videos such as the Audible, the Dynasty Show, the Dynasty Newsletter Show, the DFS Power Grid, and the Football Guys Mailbag Show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you again next week.